Okay, good morning. So today we are going to talk about the life cycle assessment of chocolate. So for the table of content, I'm going to talk about the goal and scope definition of the life cycle assessment of chocolate, followed by the life cycle inventory, also called the LCI, and we will step down to the life cycle impact assessment, is also called the LCIA. Then the interpretation of the result. So we are going to go deep in details with the interpretation of result, view the different scenario possible. So let's just move to the goal and scope. So the goal of this LCA is, first of all, to assess the environmental impact of an Italian dark chocolate, adopting a cradle to grave approach, besides identifying the environmental hotspot alongside the chocolate supply chain and the assessment of possible alternative scenarios. So we're going to see different scenarios on the same chocolate. How can we improve? How can it be better? So for the scope of the study here is aimed at the quantifying the energy used in the supply chain. So mainly during the production of cocoa, transportation, and the processing. Dark chocolate characterization. So here the main ingredient composing the dark chocolate under the study are cocoa liquor from Peruvian cacao. You see is 50% of the total dark chocolate we are assessing. And we can see all the different other elements. And for the functional unit of this study here is simply 1 kilogram of dark chocolate and is equivalent to 10 bars of chocolate. So for the system boundary, we have the life cycle stage. So here we have different studies like Jacobi et al. 2014. He studied the raw material production, and he said is the most impactful stage, and the environmental indicator here in this case was carbon stock. And we move on to another example, Perez Naira. He focused on the other hand on the transportation, manufacturing, and also the raw material, and he has as environmental indicator the global warming and the ozone layer depletion, the terrestrial ecotoxicity and aquatic ecotoxicity, and the non-renewable primary energy. This was the different environmental indicator. So for this study, we are going to focus on all the life cycle stages, including end of life with the different environmental indicator is basically the same as the one above. The only difference here is that we have the CED. Here is the cumulative energy demand. So for the system boundaries, we have the upstream, the core, and the downstream. So the upstream is basically composed of the production of the raw material, that's cocoa, sugar, packaging material. And the core phase, we have the transportation of the raw material to the processing. And the downstream process here is the distribution, the collection, incineration, landfill. This is basically the waste disposal of the end product of chocolate. So for this study, we're going to basically focus on all this. So the upstream, core, and downstream. So we move on to the environment, the life cycle inventory. Here, basically, we are going to focus on the upstream. Here, the upstream, like I said previously, is made of the primary energy consumption. And here, I wish to remind that on the calculation of the energy used, the energy from sun and biomass is not considered in this study. So it's basically the energy used in drying, packaging, and transportation, the quantitative measurable energy. So here is followed by the core phase. The core phase basically we start from the export, transportation to the factories, unloading, we have the roasting, grinding, pressing. So we can see just basically the production of chocolate. So after this, we have the downstream. Downstream is basically the end of life of cycle of the chocolate product. So we can see here that in the unit process, the unit process here, we have different energy consumption. These are the different energy consumption, and the energy involved in the unit processing is mostly from the core production phase, which you see it has a relative significant amount of energy used compared to the functional relative to the functional unit. And here we can see the principal ingredient here is Peruvian cocoa acidicated with other beans with a significant amount. We can see here we have cocoa beans 590. So total grams from 1 kilogram is basically the half, like 50%. So for the life cycle impact assessment, we can see the most impactful phase here is UP8. UP8 basically UP8. Basically, these are the different production. The first is UP8, roasting and milling. Sorry, has the highest impact on environmental by different emission, air, gas, water, and land, and it falls in the core production. So we can see here, still on the life cycle assessment, we can see a graph showing the different emissions in the atmosphere. So basically, the blue here represents the core phase. The core phase here has global warming 30%, 38% of total impact, and also layer depletion 30%. So here basically we can see the two most impactful. We have the upstream. Upstream here is more impactful on the eutrophication, abiotic depletion, acidification, and phytochemical oxidation category. So finally, the downstream here represent a really negligible contribution, which range from 0.2% eutrophication and 1.8%. I mean, it's really insignificant. You can see there in the purple at the top is the downstream. So the interpretation and the sensitive analysis. So we can see the different results here. Highlight the contribution of cocoa beans provision. The provision of cocoa beans is one of the most impactful on the environment because it consumes a lot of energy and it affects a lot of the environment, followed by the energy consumption during the production of chocolate. So to support the interpretation of the result, we analyze the methodological assumption on cocoa shell allocation, and we deepen the analysis of environmental hotspots that emerge along the chocolate supply chain down to the LCA. So we did a different study with a different goal and scope in order to support the previous analysis we just did. So here we still have the same functional unit, 1 kilogram of dark chocolate, but the cocoa were taken from different origin because we saw the two most impactful phase were from the production of the provision of cocoa. So where cocoa come from? So we have analyzed on 4 different areas of the world to see if there is a significant impact of where we take the cocoa. I don't know if you get it. So if you take the cocoa from Ghana, is there a significant difference in the emission in the environment than if you take the cocoa from Indonesia? So from here we have the 4 different base scenario. We have scenario CI, cocoa from Cote d'Ivoire; scenario GH, cocoa from Ghana; scenario ID, cocoa from Indonesia; and the base scenario is cocoa from the rest of the world. So here we have a graph showing the different base for the scenario. We have the different emission, and here we can rapidly analyze that ID, that is Indonesia, has relative high environmental effect. So the production of cocoa beans in Indonesia generate the highest impact on the majority of the category, mainly due to direct emission caused by large use of fertilizers. For instance, we can see nitrous oxide emission cause 55% of the total global warming. Ammonia, on the other hand, is 71%, and of the acidification, and nitrate 81.2% of the eutrophication. So we have also compared another one. Like, so here we can see on the first graph, first one on the left, is result in, we can just, when we see the blue line, the green line here is for the 3 generations in our system, and the dotted red line is for the conventional energy supply. So the result report in figure here enable to reduce an impact. We can see the impacts of 25 to 91% of the global warming and the abiotic depletion respectively. So it's relatively significant. So on the other hand, we have the sensitivity analysis on the energy provision in terms of the cumulative energy demand is in megajoule. So as we compare, we can see the best scenario, that is the 3 generation. Here system is more convenient. So to conclude this beautiful presentation, so we can answer the different goal of the beginning first, to know the environmental hotspot. So here we can see the cocoa beans provision, that is cultivation and transportation, and the energy supply at the manufacturing plant has emerged to be the environmental hotspot along the chocolate supply chain, because these are the 2 more impactful stages. So we can see where the cocoa come from is really more important, and the energy consumption. So for the second one, we see the comparison of different scenario of cocoa cultivation and origin farm. So the relevance of the environmental impact caused by the agricultural phase with respect to the whole life cycle, and the influence of the agricultural ecosystem and practice variability. on the environmental impact. So we have to know each sector of production, they have a different culture, they have a different way of producing cocoa that impacts differently in the environment. So, and the efficient energy supply system, we have an efficient energy supply system like the tree generation plant is really efficient to reduce the energy consumption, because the tree generation plant is simply using the dead biomass to produce energy. Actually, it helps to reduce the debt and the waste in the environment, and at the same time producing energy. So, for my personal consideration, further development are required to improve the investigation of the agricultural phase, to enlarge the evaluation to other environmental impact like water consumption, carbon balance between land use change and relative carbon emission, and plantation storage. So we also have to collect the collection of primary data and estimation of direct field emission. That is, people has to go into the field in order to collect real frame data. And the second is some certification are really missing. So despite the increasing interest in the environmental sustainability of the agri-food sector, environmental assessment and certification of cocoa and other cocoa derivatives are still missing. Given the lack and increasing global demand for cocoa derivative product, complete environmental assessment are fundamental to support chocolate producer in improving the environmental sustainability and their production. So that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe, share, press the like button, because it will help me to make another constructive video. I think this is my first video. I would like to make a much more intrusive content like this. So like and subscribe. See you for the next video.